The London South Western Railway A12s were a class of 042 tender engines, built with 6-foot driving wheels, inside cylinders, and a small but sturdy appearance. The first batch of 10, built in 1887, were of the order number A12, hence the class's name. The first batch were also the first locomotives built at the Nine Elms Works, with all previous engines for the railway being ordered from elsewhere. It's at this time they got the nickname Jubilees, because of the year in which they appeared. The large wheels on the A12s clearly pointed towards a fast passenger focus. They were similar to the LSWR's B1 class built 5 years earlier. The A12s did have some notable differences though. The driving wheels being half a foot smaller in diameter, the boiler pressure being 10 to 20 psi higher depending on which B1 you're comparing it to, and the cylinders being just a quarter-inch smaller. 27 of the first 30 came with second-hand tenders from scrapped Bayer Peacock engines. These came with a low water capacity, making it necessary for some of these tender engines to have well tanks added. The first 30 proving so successful, Adams ordered another 60, 40 of which would be built by Nielsen and Company. The Nielsen engines would have some alterations. Mechanically speaking, the steam chest was moved and reversing gear changed from screw to lever type. These would also be cosmetically altered, with some fancy brass being added, but when Drummond came into office, he had it removed. These would be the only 042 tender engines employed by the LSWR. By the time they were being built, 440s were already proving their worth for fast services, and the humble 060 was becoming quite firmly placed as the standard goods design. The wheel arrangement hints at intended use on express services, though perhaps not the biggest expresses. At this time, the LSWR already had 440s in service. The precursors to the X2 were already going strong. They were strong for their size, however, and proved very helpful on excursion services and, later, troop trains. Their bread and butter, throughout their life, would be secondary passenger services and goods work. By 1890, the X2s had begun production, the T3s in 1892, and the T6s in 1895. This same year, the A12s would stop production. This is likely due to the older express locomotives being relegated to secondary passenger services, and taking a large portion of the work that the A12s had been doing for the better part of 20 years. All 90 of this class made it into the grouping age. Withdrawals started in 1928, but were stopped by the increase in traffic at the beginning of the Second World War. 4 of the Nielsen engines survived into BR days, only barely making it into 1948, giving them a respectable lifespan of 50 years. They would never be assigned their new numbers, however. These may have been the longest surviving tender engines of their wheel arrangement, and perhaps the longest lived as well. Their design could be considered a bit old-fashioned by the time they were being built, and they were trying to prove themselves in the era of the Adams 440. He was pumping out a new one every 2 or 3 years by this point. You'd think with a setup like that, they wouldn't have made it more than the first 30 locomotives. But so confident was Adams in their ability that he asked for 60 more. Clearly there was something to them that we may never see, as none of them made it into preservation. And why would we build one of these little guys when you can finish the Patriot, or one of the P2s? That's not a shot at those projects, of course. Those classes were very important in their own right, and in comparison, the little A12s were just some massively outdated mixed traffic engines. Still, I think the A12s are worth remembering. I just want to add here at the end that I like the look of these things a lot. An inside cylinder 042 in general looks really good. They just look fast, with disproportionately large driving wheels and short wheelbases. They have a sort of bulldog posture to them. They must have been absolutely awful on the track work, by the way, having no leading wheels to guide them into turns and take the edge off. Just those massive wheels running around and unguided. Alright, off I go. Next week? Who knows what'll happen? I haven't thought it through yet, but if you're hearing this, I have already started working on something. Please drop a suggestion for what to cover in the comments, and the reason that this interests you. If you want something else to watch, last week I uploaded a video on the Southern Railway's E1/R class. You should be able to click that on screen right now. And I'll see you next week.